Hey guys, I'm Tyler Mahoney.
And I'm Jef Faulkenberry, and we're back
for another edition of the Endless Season Outdoors podcast with special guest today. We're really excited, Jef Hodges. Jef, how are you doing?
Doing great.
Jef,
appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely, is a very accomplished, long-time fisheries and wildlife biologist. Has done a lot of great work in Missouri and a lot of the states surrounding Missouri. Has done some private land management. So a lot of this episode, we're going to be talking to Jef about his experience, getting some pointers for all of you guys out there that do have land and you're looking to learn on how to make improvements. So we're going to be touching base with him on that. We're going to be talking about turkey season. We're kind of wrapping up here this coming weekend in a few days. And so we'll be touching on that, kind of what we've been seeing, hearing, and maybe a little bit more on the morels coming up and some Truman fishing too. So,
absolutely.
You know, with that, you have been out in the turkey woods a lot, and you just got back on Truman Lake today. But before we get to that, just tell us about your second turkey in a lifetime.
Second turkey in a lifetime. Well, I was fortunate enough to, in 2001, I killed a turkey that had 8 beards on it. And substantial beards. You know, I've killed some multiple bearded turkeys, but it's usually like 5 or 6 little hairs. Mm-hmm. But these were all substantial beards. And then the first week of season this year, I was with some buddies, and when I shot that 8 bearded turkey, there was 3 strutters, and I shot the one in the middle. That's just how it happened.
Yeah.
This situation, there was 2 long beards and 7 or 8 jakes, and this long beard happened to be the first one to get to where I needed him to get to.
Right.
And so it just worked out. But I killed a bird this year that had just over 50 inches worth and 6 beards.
Wow. And he had big spurs.
Yeah, good spurs, 1 3/8 spurs.
Yep.
Weighed just over 24 pounds. Mm-hmm. So it's a really, really super good bird. And then I take my wife, and she kills a double bearded 1 1/4 spur, 23-pound bird. Mm-hmm. And I took a good cousin of mine, family friend. We're all family, but and he killed a bird with 1 1/2 spurs, double beard.
Goodness
and
gracious!
Weighed just shy of 23 pounds. So,
wow. You've been in the monsters.
Yeah, big birds. Big birds this year. We haven't really seen a lot of 2-year-olds. All the birds that were taken, the birds that my buddies have taken in the area that we're hunting has been mature birds. We were talking about this before the show. It's just not a lot of 2-year-olds, and I think a lot of that's attributed to poor weather in 2019 and the floods throughout the state.
Yeah, not only lack of 2-year-olds, but for us, we got lucky enough, and I got one on opening day. My dad got one opening weekend, but the gobbling activity for us here in the west central Missouri area near Clinton has been very minimal compared to other years. We're talking where even on opening day, I think opening day was the only day I've heard a gobble past 7 a.m. around our property, and we've got several hundred acres here that we control now, and so it was just, when you think about turkey hunting, you're thinking about hearing a turkey gobble, going after them, and
if he gobbles a 10, you got it.
Yep, but we have not heard a turkey gobble except for opening day past 7 a.m. Typically, it's been between 6:15 and 6:45 a.m. And they're starting up later this year. Last year they'd be gobbling before shooting time started.
Yeah.
But they were starting after shooting time and only going until about 6:45, 7 o'clock at the latest. And that's been it for us. And so you can sit there and wait and just hope they come by and keep calling. But for me, I don't have the patience, so I just start moving. But
a lot of times on that gobbling too, it once a bird gobbles, it'll stimulate other birds to gobble. So if you're not hearing much gobbling, you don't have that stimulus that's getting the other birds fired up and getting them going. 100%. So it's kind of a compounding effect.
Yeah.
If they're quiet, then it's quiet everywhere.
Right.
Quiet.
Yeah, everyone's quiet. So there may be other birds out there that they're not getting fired up because you're not getting a lot of that gobbling going on.
To that point, it seemed like when I did have the birds somewhat fired up early in the morning, I was using a gobble call. I was gobbling at them, and they were getting going. And then when I quit doing that, thinking, okay, they've got to come check this out, No, they just stop gobbling. So exactly to your point.
You guys, Johnny loves that gobble call. He's killed so many turkeys with that gobble call. It's unreal. He tells me all the time, "Well, you should have had a gobble call." If it doesn't work out or whatever. I've had one instance that I can honestly say that bird died because
of the gobble call. Man, he and my dad need to hunt together. They'd be peas in a pod. Because, oh my gosh. My dad is the exact same way on the gobble call. There are days where all he has taken out is a gobble call. I'm like, what are you doing? You're intentionally handicapping yourself into a gobble call?
I'm not saying it don't work.
Right.
I mean, obviously those guys, like Johnny or your dad or whatever, know how to use it because they're going to kill a bird.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they're going to kill one. But I don't even own one anymore.
Yeah.
It's not something in my arsenal. I mean, I have an Elvis. That's what I have.
Yeah.
And when Elvis comes out, things are fixing to happen.
Yeah, tell everybody what old Elvis is.
I'm not a huge fan of fanning or reaping or whatever you want to call it, crawling out to the birds. Now, if I can get in a position of a gobbling bird and get him fired up, get him gobbling, and then show him that strutter, it's on. And a buddy of mine, a really good friend of mine, he was calling his Elvis, and I thought that was just the coolest thing. So it's stuck. They're all Elvis. So now when we talk about turkey hunting, he takes a pile of kids. They've killed a bunch of birds, and I always ask him, like, did it work in or did it Elvis? And he's like, it worked in or it Elvis. And he'll ask me the same thing, did it work in or did it Elvis? And man, there's just something about that. If you can get him fired up. My wife's bird, we got him fired up late in the morning. It was about 8:30, 9 o'clock. There was 3 gobblers together, and got them fired up. They had some hens with them, and the hens was trying to pull them off, walk them away. But the gobblers were still pretty interested, but they wouldn't just come. The hens are trying to drag them away. Well, you whip out Elvis, and the demeanor changes. Them birds came across one field, flew a creek into our field, all the way straight to us.
It's impressive.
Yeah,
that they wanted to get there.
And she shot that double beard. And if I'd have been in a little bit better position, I had the barrel of my gun right here, and she's kind of leaning on me, and we got a decoy in front of us, and I'm trying to make sure everything's ready here, and she shoots when birds fly, and I tried to shoot. But when one flew, it had 3 or 4 beards on it. I could see them all hanging. I'm like, oh boy. So I got a date with that guy, hopefully before season ends.
There's a good little gene pool over there.
It's so funny though, but they're 40 miles apart.
Oh.
Where she killed her bird is far away from where I killed my bird. Where Drayton killed his bird is far away from where she killed hers. So it's not like, and the 8-bearder I killed here. Yeah. So.
That's wild.
It's just, I guess, the luck of the draw.
Yeah. Hey, that's a turkey season for the memory books.
But I've been turkey hunting almost every day. Yeah. Almost. 3 days or so. But almost every day. And we've seen the same thing some days. They gobble this. Right now, they're starting to gobble about 5:20, 5:25. They're hammering pretty good because it's getting light early. And they fly down, and not a lot of gobbling for about the first hour on the ground. Then it picks back up. But it got so hot. Once it started hitting that 80, 75, 80 degrees, 9 o'clock,
done.
Game over.
Now,
Sunday, the second Sunday, which would have been the last Sunday, I guess it was, nothing on the roost. Not a peep. 8 o'clock, it's like, well, here we go. And those birds will work, But it's just weird gobbling sequence. And just like Jeff said, when one gobbles, the other gets fired up. We saw some birds strutting into binoculars way off in a field. And a buddy of mine said, I got a blind right over there. Let's go jump in it. So we go jump in a blind. We start calling. Here they come. They're jakes. And they come. They blow up and strut. And they get in the decoys, spin around on the stakes. And but they start gobbling. And 2 of them had full fans. Little bitty old beard, but full super jakes, what we call them. And they start gobbling. They got a good full gobble. Well, behind us, it's 11:30, almost noon at this point in time. Behind us, full. And they're like, oh yeah, get ready. They're gonna. I said, if we can keep them gobbling, they'll gobble one up. Sure enough, he gobbled behind us, and Andrew looks out the blind, the 3 jakes and the decoys pick their head up and they go walking away. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, here they come. They're somewhere behind us.
Yeah.
Andrew peeks out, said, I see redheads coming through the woods, and there's a bunch of them. 5 more jakes.
Oh, oh my gosh.
So, good jake crop from 2020.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's different areas, and you watch on social media, and I'm in a lot of these turkey hunting pages and forums and discussions, and I don't debate a whole lot, but I just kind of peek in. And, you know, certain areas of the state still are maintaining pretty decent. Other areas are not, which is, it's always going to be that way.
Yeah.
But with the increase in public hunting the last 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
you know, around in our area, in Henry County and Benton County, Truman Lake, we have so much opportunity for public land hunters. And so we draw one heck of a crowd. And the flood, the increase in hunters, I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
The proof's in the pudding. You can make numbers whatever you want, but the proof's in the pudding. The increase in hunters, the floods, and the poor weather on the 2 years back-to-back bad hatches has really made an impact in our area.
Yeah.
Huge impact.
Yeah, I mean, we were looking at the numbers earlier. The turkey harvest right now is just right under 30,000, I believe. Last year, I think it ended up somewhere in that 42, 43,000 total range. So,
and we're at 28,000, I think.
Roughly. And so, I mean, there's not going to be 14,000 birds killed this last week. So
No.
it's going to be way down compared to last year.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see if any changes get made as a result.
I don't know. I don't know. We saw it coming. I mean, everybody's seen it coming except the right folks.
What are your thoughts on that, Jeff? I mean, Kansas went to one bird. Is that something that the state or, maybe it's something that people need to self-manage their own properties where they limit their harvest? I mean, what are your thoughts on kind of the turkey harvest, what we were just talking about?
Yeah, to be real honest with you, I'm not quite up on the numbers with turkey hunting to find out. I mean, I know the department, they look at those harvest numbers every year, and they've got some other surveys that they do to look at their numbers. But you also know that, it's 2 bird limits. It's a tradition in Missouri. And for everybody that's rooting for a 1 bird limit, there's someone else rooting for them to keep a 2 bird limit.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same way with 1 o'clock hunting.
Yeah, all day hunting versus 1 o'clock hunting. So here the department sits in the middle, and how do you? So their line has been, and I subscribe to this, is they want to follow the science, whatever the science says. Yeah. So I've got to have faith that they're looking at what their survey results are telling them, and they're making their decisions based on that.
I think by the end of the season, it's going to be like, hey, look, we need to take a step back and maybe look at something here, because in every other state is.
Yeah.
I mean, all the other states is. I do know.
Yeah, in general, turkey numbers are declining in a lot of places.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do know Kentucky right now is hitting records. They had a fantastic season this year for whatever reason. They did real good, but Oklahoma's struggling. Kansas obviously has been struggling.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just something. Litter. There's some guys I can't say either way. So this is not an opinion. This is just something that has been brought up to me. But a big business right now is chicken and turkey litter being fertilizer on farmers' fields, and there's I guess some chance that it could spread disease. I think most of it is coon, skunks, possums, armadillos, that sort of thing. That fur prices are down. You don't have the coon dog runners anymore like you did. And trappers don't trap as much, and I think that's most of it. Nest raiding predators.
Yeah.
I don't think it's so much the bobcats and the coyotes and the foxes. I think it's the nest raiding predators.
One thing I was reading too, interestingly, and there's really nothing we can do about it, but a big predator of adult toms is owls. They will pound them on the roost when they're gobbling. Yeah. I'll have to go try to find the article, but it was a pretty scientific article that talked about that there is a pretty sizable mortality rate due to owls. Nothing we can do about that.
Right. I don't know how significant that would be.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to follow that up and find
according
out.
to the article, it was significant enough for them to be writing an article about it. So that was news to me, and I think the study was done in the southeast part of the country.
Wasn't it about the 50s when they reintroduced the turkey back in like Henry County? They had a release and a whole deal. I want to say
it seems early to me. I was thinking more 60s, but I don't know. I've been around a few years, and I remember the first turkey I ever heard gobble was probably about, I'm going to guess about 1973, 74, and that was in St. Clair County.
Yeah.
And my dad was using a gobble call. but there weren't any hunting season then either.
But somewhere between those mid 70s and we'll say that 2000. We had tons of turkeys.
So they initiated it in the mid 1950s. Missouri's turkey restoration efforts would span more than 2 decades.
I was thinking it was 56. But
involved the relocation of more than 2,600 turkeys to 213 sites in 91 counties.
Yeah. So they started in South Missouri, just like they did with the deer, and then they just kind of started moving to other locations. Of course, as you know, the National Wild Turkey Federation was real big into those releases and being involved in that as well. But one of the things that you didn't mention, and you were talking about impacts on birds, you were saying, and this is true with quail and a lot of other non-game species as well, pheasants and game birds and whatnot, are the neonicotinoid insecticides that are on a lot of the farm crops that are out there. And they kind of have a double impact on them. One is insects that feed on plants that are treated with the neonics, they die.
Right.
So there's a food source for all of these young birds that's out there. And there's also some fairly recent research that's indicating that if those birds go ahead and pick up those dead ones, then they start to accumulate some of that insecticide in their bodies, so then it affects reproduction rates or survival. So there, you got 100 things out there because you can't just say this is it. It's not the flood, it's not the insecticides, it's not the coyotes, it's not the raccoons, but you put them all together.
It's all the recipe,
and that's what's doing it. And then we're seeing these huge changes on the landscape with all of these things. And I always like to refer to it as the coyotes and the raccoons and the possum. Let's take coyotes out of it because actually they kind of do a favor. But the raccoons and opossums, all of that, they're a symptom of the problem. The problem is a bigger issue. They become symptoms of the problem. Doesn't mean they're not part of the problem, but they're a symptom of the problem.
But just like a sickness, you treat that symptom with trapping.
You treat the symptom, right. But if you could get at the root and treat the cause, that's where you're really going to be.
So this is very fascinating because when I was writing for the Kansas City Star, someone had wrote in wanting me to do an article about a pesticide called paraquat. And they were convinced in Kansas specifically that it was decimating not only turkeys but pheasants. That was their qualm with it. And it all goes back to it was an insecticide that killed the bugs, but they were saying also was killing the birds. It's by directly impacting them.
Is paraquat an insecticide? I thought it was an herbicide.
It's a pesticide.
Pesticide covers both. That's the general category for plants or animals.
Okay, so I'd have to do some further research on it, but supposedly it's illegal all over the world, but it's still allowed to be used a little bit here. This was a couple years back, so the information I have now...
I'm pretty familiar. Paraquat's used frequently.
So, I don't know. There might be something to it.
I don't know.
It was going to take way more research and time than the amount of money the Kansas City Star was paying me to do that story. So they didn't want to do the story. But anyway, that is very fascinating. So, I
just hope they bounce back. You know, whatever we got to do to make that work. I just hope that like I said, treat all these symptoms, find the root problem.
Yeah. The highlight of my turkey season was the mushrooms here the last week, late season. I'll just say, when you're in these mineland areas, especially now, you might still have a chance. Like Maybe. It'll be on north-facing slopes. Don't even bother looking anywhere else. North-facing slopes. Probably too late now, but late season, that's where they're at. Old Jake Tonsfeld over here is the sage of mushroom hunting over there in the Ponderosa. Has taught me that the last couple of years, and it has been spot on both years. So something interesting for folks for next year to keep in mind. Before we get into some of the land management stuff, Jeff, I wanted to get a quick update from you on Truman Lake.
The other Jeff.
Yeah, the other Jeff.
Okay.
Jeff with 2 Fs. You were out today, you had a good day, and it's funny, I've been seeing some people, like you said, on the fishing forums, the spawn's not on, I showed up, they're not on the banks, and I'm like, I don't know, you're obviously not reading Truman Lake Fishing Intel, or you would know, but there's a lot of fish on the banks, aren't there?
Yeah, there is. All our fish, we caught our 60 today, on Monday, and I had a little boy and his mom and dad out, and we had a really good time. We were casting and dragging jigs.
Yep.
And really just had a bomb time.
Yeah.
And some big fish.
Yeah.
Some really big males and some big females. And we caught some females that were about done, but we caught some that hadn't spawned yet.
Yeah. So it's, how long do you expect that to last?
It could be 2 days. It could be 2 weeks. You don't.
Yeah.
It's so hard to say. Weather's going to permit. Weather's going to do everything.
Yeah, and I haven't checked the forecast, so I don't know if aren't we
some
expecting
rains.
Yeah.
We got some rains.
Temperature's supposed to drop.
Some cool fronts coming in, and so it'll make it challenging.
Yeah.
We'll adapt and overcome.
Yeah. Well, as all of you know, we have TrumanLakeFishingIntel.com. We'll have fishing reports here virtually every single day. We did over 50 fishing reports in April.
That's great.
What's kind of funny is there's one day I didn't put up a fishing report.
And everybody wondered where it was.
And that was the day that some folks wrote in, "Where's the fishing report?" I'm like, man, guys, I've got over 50 up here for you. So anyway, we're going to continue to put out as close to daily and weekly fishing reports and tournament coverage, all that kind of stuff at Truman Lake Fishing Intel. Jeff's one of our contributors, so we'll have reports from him now that he's getting back on the water. We'll have reports from him every
Turkey
week.
season's about over.
Yep. Time to chase those fish.
I made that post the other day. I said I was getting tired of eating ribeyes and 2 eggs and morel mushrooms for breakfast. I'm going to be back on the boat eating granola bars and beef jerky before too long.
Yep, it'd be a good change of pace. So, you handle waking up early a lot better than I do.
I do, man. Turkey season for me is like I don't know what it's like, but if I I can't get up soon enough.
Yeah.
If I gotta get up 2:30, I'm gonna get up 2:30. Get up, it don't bother me.
Right.
Because I know I'm going turkey hunting. I love it.
Yep.
I absolutely love it.
Yep. It's friggin' awesome. Well, I want to get into talking about some land management stuff with Jef Hodges here. Jeff, why don't you give everyone a quick background as to your experience in the land management world and some of the organizations you've worked with?
Okay. I started out, my first job was actually with the University of Missouri. 1980?
Easy.
Yeah.
Get yourself here.
It was at Gaylord Memorial Research Laboratory, which was down in the Boot Hill, next door to Duck Creek Fish and Mingle National Wildlife Refuge down there. I was a research assistant there, and then from there I went to work for the Department of Conservation, worked for them in a variety of jobs and locations around the state for about 5 years. Spent some time with Sharp Brothers Seed Company, who were major native grass seed producers, wildflowers and whatnot. Got a lot of really good experience there. Went from there to Quail Unlimited, was a regional director for Quail Unlimited. About the same time I left Sharp Brothers, I also started up a business doing, as a side gig, doing contract land management stuff. I started out doing prescribed burns and native grass plantings because there were, working at Sharp Brothers, there were a lot of people looking for someone to help them do that. And there wasn't anybody out there. So it was like, hey, here's a chance to do something I enjoy doing and make a little extra money. Well, that just continually grew until, I don't know. I kept doing that through about 2015 or so. And in 2015, I had a position offered to me with the National Bobwhite Technical Committee. It was really, really appealing to me. So I took that position. So now I'm working full time for them, but I still keep engaged in the land management. I kind of dip my toes in a little bit, do whatever. During the time I was doing land management, I was a registered technical service provider with the NRCS, which allowed me to basically do a lot of the things that they would normally do, come out of the office and do. And so I was qualified to do those kinds of things and sign off on management activity. Wrote a fair number of management plans, implemented a lot of management plans, and then also did work for people that had farm bill programs that were enrolled in farm bill and they needed native grasses planted or prescribed burning or timber stand improvement or wetland management. I mean, I've dabbled in about all of it.
Yeah, you've done it all.
Yeah, and 40 years.
So we're at the tail end of turkey season. So I guess, in my mind, we just got through talking about how there's some tough conditions the last few years. Do you have any pointers on what folks that do have their own land or lease some land and they have some control over the place, any pointers for what they can be doing to improve turkey habitat?
Yeah, when you think about turkey habitat, it's the same with any kind of wildlife. Food, water, shelter. It's got the things you're looking for, but particularly with turkeys, you're talking about nesting and brood rearing habitat. It's kind of the bottleneck.
Yeah.
Except in the years you have a lot of rain and a flood, like we did in 2019. But with that said, creating the right kind of habitat can improve your nesting and brood rearing. So your population would tentatively be better if you got everything out there you need.
You can basically grow the birds and then hold the birds.
Grow the birds, then hold the birds. Exactly. So with that in mind, you think about what's a turkey like to nest in. Native grass fields are used a lot. They use a lot of native grass fields, but they also use the timber. But they typically don't nest in a closed canopy timber. They kind of like it a little bit open, so you get some sunlight to the ground. And that's really one of the big things that I've noticed on a lot of properties when I visit them. And when they're talking about managing for deer and turkey, they've got a woodland that's overgrown and it's thick, and they've got a solid canopy that no sunlight's getting to the ground. And you look at the ground and there's nothing but leaf litter.
Oh yeah.
The oak trees aren't producing the amount of it. They're producing some acorns, but not the amount they could be because of all the competition around them. So, one of the things that you could do is go in and start doing some thinning in there and try to get some sunlight to the ground. One of the other things you can do is run a prescribed fire through it and get that litter off the ground. So then you've got some plants coming up that provide some of the either the turkeys are going to browse on the plants, or else there's going to be bugs on the plants. And bugs on the plants are really, really important for brooding. Those, it doesn't matter whether it's a quail chick, a cardinal chick, or a turkey chick, bugs are critically important for the first 4 to 6 weeks of their life. They've got to have bugs. So basically, you're going to be managing for bugs.
Right.
That's what you're targeting.
Yeah.
You got to figure out what you're going to do. Manage for, and so thin your woods, get some sunlight to the ground, run a fire through there to consume the leaf litter so that what is there can come up. And then I would say kind of on the back side of that, if maybe consider putting some food plots in. Alfalfa is really well known for attracting bugs, but be sure you get maybe an older variety of alfalfa that doesn't have some of the neonics in them into the genetics like we talked about earlier.
Like
do
a
something
Roundup Ready bean type.
In general, broadleaf plants, sunflowers and buckwheat and those kinds of plants usually attract a lot of insects. So, be thinking along those lines for doing something
Isn't
like that.
Isn't it pretty hard to beat clover? Like, I've been around the chufas and the brassicas and the stuff like that. And they get it, but it seems like clover is just like
Clovers, yeah, they like a clover. Of course, they eat clover seed when they can find it and scratch it up, and yeah, it attracts some insects. So yeah, clover's not a bad thing. But here's one of the things that, and I guess this is my personal peeve when it comes to land management and dealing with stuff. Okay, let's say you got 100 acres.
Yep.
And out of that, 60 acres of timber. And maybe you got a pasture or row crop ground, and you're either grazing the pasture and row crop, so it's kind of out of the equation. So you're looking at the 60 acres of timber you want to manage. Okay, so first thing you think about is, well, I want to put some food plots out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm 60 acres. We kind of rule of thumb is 5 to 10%.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go all out. We're going to do 10%. We got 6 acres that we're going to put in on this 60 acres. All right. So you're banking on 6 acres out of 60 to provide everything that you need for those turkeys.
Yeah.
Right? Why don't you do timber management on 54 acres
Right.
that is going to provide what they need not only when that food plot's ready for them, but in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. Don't get me wrong, food plots work and they're a great deal, but don't focus all your effort on food plots. Work on improving the other habitat. And then now we go back to this other idea that we're creating food year round. If we start managing the 54 acres of timber, now we're starting to talk about nesting and brood ring cover.
Right.
That's part of that whole equation.
Yep.
So that's really where I again, this is my personal opinion, but I think that's really where you need to be looking.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on 6 acres, let's focus on 54 acres.
Yeah.
And here's the other
That
deal.
makes sense.
Food plot. Maybe not with clover, but a lot of annual food plots. If you're talking about milo or sunflowers or buckwheat, you're talking $100 an acre every year. Every year, $100 an acre every year. 6 acres, that's $600. Okay, you can do ballpark 10 acres of TSI, timber stand improvement, for that same $600. That's good for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then you go do 10. Then you do 6 acres next to that. 6 acres. So
In
you
5
can
years,
invest
you've done the whole farm.
you can invest your same $600, and over a period of time, you've got the whole thing covered. So, to me, it just makes a lot more sense to approach it that way than focusing solely on food plots.
Right.
Timber stand improvement would be like the burns on the leaf litter.
Yeah, no, not technically.
Yeah.
That'd be prescribed fire.
Okay.
That would be part of the equation you put into it. But So, for timber stand improvement, you go in and, okay, we're still looking on your 60 acres.
Yeah.
So you need to have somebody that has an idea of what they're looking at. You go in, and let's say there's white oak and there's red oak in there. Okay, and there's some nice mature trees. Then what you would want to do is select that tree and say, okay, that's the one that I want to promote. So you come in and basically you cut every tree that is touching the crown of that to create an area around that tree that eliminates that competition. That tree then has a lot more energy available and nutrients available. It produces a lot more acorns. So you go through and you do that, scattered out through your woods, one here, one over here, and you thin that down so that your trees that are producing a crop have more nutrients available, less competition. They're not competing for water. They're not competing for nutrients. Not competing for sunshine, and that will help those trees do that. And the other thing,
Now you're not saying like go and just cut all the timber down except for those few oaks, you know what I mean?
well,
Or you wouldn't have
I'm kind of a grasslands guy, so I'd be all over that. I'm more grasslands than I am timber. So let's just cut them all down.
Cut 'em all down.
Have you driven by my place recently? You saw the timber harvest I did, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's.
I get it. I get it.
But no, a lot of people. You might say, well, the elm tree's really not producing anything value. It doesn't grow in a shape or a form that a turkey's going to roost in. It's not really producing a lot of food for turkeys or whatever. Right. So you might want to go in and just take your elm trees out.
Yeah.
Some people don't want hickory in their woods. Some people don't want pin oaks in their woods. You know, I mean, for me, I would favor a post oak over a pin oak every day.
Yeah.
I would favor a white oak over a post oak.
Yeah.
You know, I would probably favor a pecan over a hickory. So that's sometimes you got to make those decisions when you're in the woods, deciding what trees to cut down and how to create the break in the canopy to let that sunlight to the ground.
When you are cutting the trees, I've read mixed opinion. There's another land management guy I follow on social media. His name's Don Higgins. And he's pretty
Familiar
big
with him.
Yeah. If I understand him correctly, he does not like hinge cutting at all. Hinge cutting, can you fill us in on what it is versus the difference between that and just cutting a tree?
Yeah, the whole idea behind hinge cutting is just cut the tree partway through and then pull it down to the ground so you still have the part of the bark still attached that allows the tree to stay alive. With the idea is you get the top of the tree down on the ground and it's still alive, so it's still producing leaves, which is browse for the deer. And it also is get this woolly cover down on the ground, a living brush pile that creates maybe a turkey nesting spot, or if not a place for a fawn to for a doe to leave a fawn while the doe goes out and feeds or whatever. So it creates some good cover. So the idea is, that's the idea behind hinge cutting. And what a lot of people like to do is maybe take a series of several trees in a radius and hinge them in on each other. To again kind of create that living brush pile.
And I mean, from what I've read, he doesn't like it. His plans are all about killing 200-inch deer. So he is very strategic about the way he will drop a tree to funnel animal movement. That might be why he doesn't like it. For a lot of people that go about doing it, they don't have a plan and then just drop trees all over the place, and then the deer, there's no way for them to even go through it all. So, I mean, it sounds like maybe it's a personal preference on him. I mean, is there any really pro or con? Is there any con to doing hinge cutting other than what I just talked about if you don't have a plan for it?
Not from the wildlife perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if you're a person that likes that real nice golf course look, you know, or the park or the state park where the trees and it's all mowed, then you're not going to like hinge cutting.
Right.
Because, I mean, it's ugly. It really makes it look ugly. But to a guy like me and you guys, when you look at it, it's like, oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Look at it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I like to drive by and see those white rings around their eyes and their nose with the rack sticking up when they're laying up in there.
Right,
You know?
right.
Yeah, I mean, when I drive by a place like that, it's like, man, I want to go turkey hunting there.
That's right. Yeah.
Interesting.
So you were saying that you right now in the present work for the Bob White Technical.
Yeah, National Bob White Technical Committee.
Yeah. What is? Let's get into that because I'm a quail lover.
Yeah. Okay. So I can't really remember the history here exactly. It's been 17 years or so ago. A group of biologists in the southeast United States, which was kind of the stronghold for quail, you know, Georgia plantation kind of deal. But a group of state agency biologists got together and said, hey, we got to do something about the decline in quail. Well, long story short, that group from the southeast eventually expanded to cover 25 states. Basically everything from the Rocky Mountains west. I mean, Texas up to Nebraska and then east. Excuse me, not west, but east.
Yeah.
So all 25 of those state agencies got together. I mean, not everybody in the agency, but people within the agencies, their quail experts got together and they developed a national quail plan. And anyway, this technical committee is made up of all of those biologists from all of those states, 25 different states. We have an annual meeting, and typically there's 150 people that show up from all of these different states to talk about the latest research and what's going on. So the technical committee is the technical advisory side of the plan. And you may be familiar with the North American Waterfowl Management Plan. This is the North American Quail Management Plan, more or less.
All right.
I mean, it's basically the same concept as the Waterfowl Management Plan, except it's targeted to quail. But holy cow, we got a whole lot more challenges than ducks ever had.
Yeah. And there's tons of dollars that go into waterfowl management.
Because there's federal legislation behind that.
So why?
It's called the North American Waterfowl Management Act, I think. I'm not really into the wetland stuff.
They put a lot of money into because of federal.
A lot of federal money, right? It's federal. They're migratory birds.
Yeah,
they have that. But quail are what are known as a state trust species. Missouri is responsible for their quail. Kansas is responsible for their quail.
Okay.
Texas, their quail. Georgia, their quail. So they're all that's the idea behind the National Bobwhite Technical Committee is get all of these states that are individually in charge of quail on their own state to be pulling the same direction and trying to coordinate their efforts.
So there still is, I mean, even though Quail Unlimited and programs like that just kind of, I don't know, it just, I guess, dried up maybe being the thing or merged into another avenue. I'm not really sure what.
Yeah, Quail Unlimited, I've got a history with them, so I'll just be polite.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Quail Unlimited eventually folded.
Yeah.
There were a couple of groups that sprung out of that. One was the Quail and Upland Wildlife Federation, which is based in Buffalo, Missouri. And the other one was the Quail and Upland Game Alliance, which is based out of Illinois. Then I forgot there was another one. There's another one called Quail Coalition, which is based out of Texas.
Okay.
And of course, Quail Forever came along probably 5 years prior to Quail Unlimited falling apart.
Yeah.
So Quail Forever is still out there. Quail Forever's
I heard of Forever.
Yeah. Well, Pheasants Forever started a sister organization called Quail Forever.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they operate on the same
principle. Other ones, but I honestly had no idea that there was, so there is plans, there is things in place where we're trying to get this back to.
Right.
I mean, what's
well, it's all based upon there's a part of this, and by the way, there's a website you go to and you look up all this stuff. It's called bringbackbobwhites.org.
Okay.
Bringbackbobwhites.org, and you can look up a lot of different stuff there. I lost my track. What were we talking about? Oh, well, yeah. What's the plan?
What's the plan?
Yeah. We have a program called the Coordinated Implementation Program, which is basically a proof of concept. So right now we have, I believe, 19 active. What we call them SIP, Coordinated Implementation Program, SIP program areas. A couple of them here in Missouri. Georgia's got a couple. Oklahoma's got one. Texas has got two. I mean, they're scattered around. We've got, out of the 25 states, we've got 19 active ones on the ground. And basically what this is to prove the concept that is in the management plan, the national management plan. And we first did 5 pilots. Missouri was one of the first pilots. Iowa was also part of that. Georgia was part of that. Kentucky was part of that. Don't recall what the 5th one was. But anyway, the pilots were done. And basically, we follow a lot of the same things that we've been preaching for years.
Sure.
But the difference is we're doing it on a landscape scale. What the basis of this is, due to some modeling, and of course modeling may or may not be exactly right, but it's all based on a computer model, where the people that did all the research on the literature and all of that, they said to sustain a population of quail for 99 years, because I guess their field wasn't big enough to make it 100 in the database, so it could only be 99 years. To sustain a population of quail for 99 years, it takes a minimum of 1,500 acres of 100% quail habitat on no less than 25% of the landscape. So if you've got 1,500 acres of 100% quail habitat, that's all you need. And you can maintain a population for 99 years. If it's not 100% quail, if it's only 50% quail habitat, then you're going to have, I can't do the math on that. What is that? You're going to have to do 3,000 acres.
Yep.
Okay? if you're going to meet the minimum, no less than 25%, that's 6,000 acres.
Right.
And 25% of that has to be quail habitat in order to sustain that population.
Yep.
So far, on the focal areas, what we're calling them on these programs, we are proving that if you follow that formula, that does increase quail populations. One of them here in Missouri records 2 quail per acre and has for 2 or 3 years.
That's pretty
Everybody
good.
else in the country
That's
is not.
really good. Actually.
Well, I mean,
for now, it may not be the 80s.
oh no,
Now,
yeah,
few
no,
birds and acres.
that's a huntable population.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huntable population. A half a quail per acre is a huntable population.
Yeah.
A half a quail per acre is about what we would have experienced in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
that was good. I mean,
Right.
I was a kid, but I mean,
Right.
that was good. And you guys, this is something that we haven't really talked about here on the Endless Season podcast. And so as we get into this, I'm super excited about this, and I hope you guys are too. So, talking about the 80s and the early 90s, I don't think I don't want to say the decline, because there's still some birds in the area.
Right.
I mean, for sure. I have birds. I feed, and we have quail. I have quail in the yard. I video them. I take pictures of them. I love them. But like when you're talking about building on, if you have 6,000 acres, 25%, are they releasing birds on that? Are they surrogating?
No, these are wild
just
birds
wild
that are,
birds
that are
that are
expanding into
expanding
that. You know, they're starting
naturally.
with a source population and they're expanding into that. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, basically what it boils down to is that you have to have a large enough landscape,
Right.
and then you have to have a source population of birds to work with. And there's a lot of other research out there that indicates that, our mantra has been for years, and I'm as guilty as anybody else, was you build it, they'll come.
Yeah.
And that worked for a while, but then things changed and it didn't work any longer. So, and it doesn't work that way anymore. And there's some fairly recent research out there that indicates that if you don't have birds within about 2 miles, you're probably not ever going to get them.
You're not going to draw them. Right.
Probably not. They're probably not. Now, there's some research out of Oklahoma that showed birds traveling 20 miles.
Yeah.
In the spring or in the fall when the coveys are breaking up in the springtime, or get a shuffle in the fall. But I don't know if you've ever been to western Oklahoma, it's all quail habitat. So, you could see them going 20 miles.
Yeah.
When you get in a fragmented landscape like we have around here, there's not that much of a continuum of habitat for them to move that far. So they just don't go that far.
No. In my area around my place, we have some crop. We have some ditches with short trees where there's not a lot of predator birds. There is, obviously the coons, possums, and all that stuff. But I trap.
Right.
And I don't trap for hides. I solely trap for wildlife. Those birds, I never see like big bunches. A covey might be 7. But we have a lot of 2s and 3s.
Yeah.
And we feed them. And I know where they stay. I know where they come. I know where they go. But they don't move very far.
Yeah.
And they're pretty patternable, really.
I've seen the same pair 3 times in the last week up on our north side of our place. I don't know if they're nesting right now or not, but very consistent right there.
Yeah.
They come up behind. We're lucky we got a couple coveys, but there's only 2 or 3 at the most coveys, but they're pretty sizable. 15 to 20 birds that we've seen in different parts of the property. So, speaking of predators on quail, this is just a question. It's a story I've been told by
Turkeys.
Yeah. Do the turkeys eat the baby quail? That is
I'm saying no.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying as well.
But that's a professional.
Well, let's see what you're. I don't think there's ever been a true study done on it, but I'm just curious.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there has been.
Oh yeah. There's been cameras. I mean, bobwhite quail are the most studied game bird of all game birds in North America.
Oh, really? Okay.
Absolutely. Quail studies were taking place in the 1920s.
Okay.
And I mean, never been documented.
Yeah.
Never been documented. Now, does it happen? Well, maybe.
I can see them thumping them, maybe killing a chick, but I just can't see
it's never been documented. And believe me, there have been some really weird things documented.
I bet.
they've documented cows eating quail eggs. They've documented deer eating quail eggs.
Yeah.
They've obviously snakes and possums and armadillos and raccoons, and armadillos aren't eating them, but they're destroying the nest. You know, so they've documented a lot of different things that are roadrunners. But they've never documented a turkey. Never documented a turkey eating quail.
I don't know. I know of, like, I've heard it from probably over 10 different people over the last 5 years that are hardcore upland bird hunters that swear the damn turkeys are eating all the eggs of the quail.
I could give you the history on that, but you know, it'd take a whole nother podcast.
Now, let's, talking about land management and quail population and stuff like that, what's your feelings, and personally and professionally, on surrogators or put and take?
I think on either one of those scenarios, if the reason you're doing it is to provide a hunting opportunity, maybe to introduce a young person to it, or to recruit somebody into it, I think it's fine. It works great. If you're going to do, and that would be put and take or surrogate either one.
Right.
If you're thinking about the surrogator as a way to supplement wild bird population, enhance your population, I think you're probably throwing your money away. That money would be better invested in doing habitat improvements. But if you're an isolated island somewhere in the middle of nowhere, even doing the habitat improvements aren't going to help you because of that distance away from another population. And there's been several studies done on the survival rate of surrogator birds, and whether they're from captive birds or even wild birds. And it's not good. I mean, its survival rate's below 15%. In a lot of cases, below 5%.
And surrogator birds, is that where there's like that little box?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And they can come and go as they please, or is it...
No, not with surrogators. You raise them to 5 weeks, and then you let them out.
Okay.
And the whole theory behind that is they imprint on that area because that's where they've been raised.
Gotcha.
And now I've used them, but it's been to provide a shooting opportunity.
Right. Not to enhance the
enhance a wild population.
Do you think that pen raised or doing that or releasing pen raised birds would have a negative impact on your already wild population?
That's questionable. It hadn't been shown to be an issue.
Right.
Myself and most people in my profession like to rely on the science.
Sure.
And the science doesn't really support that. Potentially it could be, but we don't. Can't really say for sure.
I guess like me.
Most of those birds aren't surviving long enough to infect the population or dilute the genetics.
Right.
They're just not living that long.
Right.
I don't want to say never, because there are some birds that do make it, to the next year, make it through.
Is it the average lifespan of a quail, even the wild ones, like not even a year?
Yeah, like not even a year.
It's like 9 months, I swear.
Yeah, right? I mean, the oldest, I don't know for sure, but it's just, a wild quail. Yeah, I mean, if they live to a ripe old age of 3, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. But I mean, most of them don't make it to a year. I mean, obviously some make it a year because they're out reproducing.
Right.
But they have to trying to get those numbers built up for that reproduction year to year to year to year to year.
Right.
When do they reproduce? Is it right now?
They're seeking nest locations right now.
Okay.
They're not not laying eggs. That cold snap we had, what was that, 3 weeks ago or so? That probably shut them down for a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, quail, in this latitude, generally from about the 1st of May to the 1st of September is when they could lay eggs. Most of the eggs are...
That's a big window.
A really big window. Most of the eggs are not laid until after the middle of June. Or the end of May, somewhere in there. A lot of birds hatch at the very end of June, early July, and then there's a lot of birds that hatch in early August.
Yeah.
So they.
I sure miss the huntable population. We raised with Grandma and Grandpa. We had 3,500 bobwhites on the ground at one time. We had acres and acres and acres of flight pens and soldier preserves and and different stuff all over the country. And that's my granddad actually got Johnny into raising. And we've always talked about that. You realize that 15% survival rate, or sometimes less than 5%.
Or less, right.
But I mean, that's better than 0%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
5% of something's better than 0% of nothing. But like you said, most of the time you're maybe not trying to enhance, but create a hunting opportunity for the fall. I mean, you'd love to enhance. You'd like to think that, and even a different strain. Johnny's raised those Georgia Giants, and they're just a hardier, healthier. And I have to think in the back of my mind that maybe, for whatever reason, if that dude could adapt to some conditions, if those conditions were killing the wild ones because they're considerably smaller and maybe not as, maybe that strain would survive. I don't know.
I don't know. There's been a lot of work with translocating, birds, but which brings up another topic. They actually are having some success with translocating wild birds.
Oh.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
but man, is that an expensive proposition?
Yeah,
and that's the biggest thing. Is like, well, why can't we put in tags? Like, well, somebody's got to buy all these birds.
Yeah,
And if you buy 100, or let's say you buy 1,000, and only 5% of them make it, that's a pretty good kick in the pants.
Yeah.
Right. Well, particularly when we're talking about having to have that landscape level of quality of habitat. I mean, it's packing sand in a rat hole.
Yeah.
But
I think if a person puts the money in, puts the time in and the sweat in to build his farm, to try to enhance, the wildlife, I think he should be allowed to, if he wants to turn 300 loose, turn 300 loose. And I think you can if you buy the permit.
Yeah, you buy the permit. Yeah.
I think that's a good thing, and maybe some of it would bleed on the neighbors, maybe and I think if everybody maybe got in a collective mindset, but it just, gosh, I know we have viewers that are excellent bird hunters, but you just don't see the bird dogs much anymore.
Well, the last few years though, there seems to be a little bit of an uptick.
Rodney Hargrave's a good buddy of mine, and he's got bird dogs and goes all over the place, chasing those things. And I miss it. I trained a lot of dogs and all that for Buddy Bear up at Bear's Den Kennels, And I used to train some dogs and sell them to him, and he sold him a lot of birds and everything. And we raised the pheasants and the quail and chuckers. And we had different strains. We had the Georgia Giants. We had the Alabama Redlegs. We even had some California Blue Quail. And, time to time, just raising different things. But It is nice in the summertime. You can come to my house about any evening and hear them whistling.
Right.
And
it's
childhood memory for me.
Yeah.
Raising them.
It's fun. Exactly what you just said. Sitting out here on the porches and just they're doing their little whistle, and if you're just quiet, and they'll come right up. They'll come right up to our bird feeders too. So it's kind of.
So really though, this time of year. Out turkey hunting or whatever, if you hear the bobs calling, that's one way to kind of get an index of your population. First of all, they're there because you're hearing them calling.
Right.
And so if you hear 5 or 6 different bobs, then you've got 5 birds out there that are potentially breeding. So what that translates to in the fall is a different story, but at least you've got something out there that's working towards it. Another part of that is then to go back in the fall. Typically about deer season, when you're sitting on a deer stand early morning, about 30 minutes before sunrise, they have this covey call. And I can't imitate it, but you can find them online as easy as you can, and you hear those covey calls. Well, then you can say, well, there's a covey, there's a covey, there's a covey. Then based on averages, you can say, well, that's, if there's 3 coveys calling, there's probably 30 birds out there. So then if you want to set a harvest target, let's say I don't want to shoot any more than 25% of what I've got, and then you figure your 25% of those 30 birds and then quit. And that's you set your harvest at that way you're not over harvesting.
Or
that's 50% or whatever. 50% is probably a little bit high because the mortality rate is so high. If you harvested 50, that'd be on the high side.
In the beginning of the decline, though, it was the biggest thing or thought, I'm sure there's so much, you guys have done so much studying now that got all kinds of ideas, but in the beginning it was habitat, right?
Right.
I mean, mostly habitat. I mean, farmers are farming ditch to ditch, hedgerows are going out, not saying that farmers don't need to farm ditch to ditch. I know there's farmers on here, so, but I'm saying that they push out a lot of trees and stuff like that.
I mean, it's still habitat.
The habitat's changed,
Yeah, absolutely. It's still habitat, but what we've not done previously, we've not looked at that landscape scale. We've not looked at how much it takes to maintain it. And you think about that little island of habitat that keeps getting shrunk smaller and smaller and smaller, and now you've got the raccoons and the possums and the skunks. They don't have to search all of this area now. All they got to do is search this area right here. So that puts a lot more pressure on them. That's a symptom of the problem.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I hate to cut us off, but we're right at about an hour.
Already?
Where we like to kind of...
Did we get off track?
No.
We kind of got off track.
No, Jeff, I think we're going to have you back for round 2 at some point.
There's a lot more I know I'd like to learn, and hopefully you guys too.
Yeah, because, we didn't even get to start talking about any of the deer stuff, which I'm sure you got a lot of
we didn't even talk about quail today. We weren't intending to do that.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
Jeff just had to ask the question.
Yes,
well,
indeed.
but that's my passion. So you hit the question, and then
heck yeah,
you open the door, I'm coming in.
That's right. Is there any websites or contact information or anything about like some of the organizations you'd like people to know about that you want to share real quick?
If a guy's got a farm and wants to do some improvement or has questions or what can I do on my farm?
The first thing I tell people in Missouri is contact Missouri Department of Conservation. They have people called private lands conservationists. And then Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, I'm assuming there's probably some Kansas folks in here too. They have individuals within their agency that come out and do private land visits, and they'll look at things and make some recommendations. No obligation, doesn't cost anything. They come look at it, make some recommendations. Other than that, the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, there are a number of federal farm bill programs that will help pay for a lot of habitat improvements out there. So once you kind of get a plan in place or kind of know what you want to do, you can go visit with those people, and you might qualify for some cost share assistance to be able to help pay for getting the work done.
I know our local NRCS that's the one over behind Pizza Glen, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Henry County.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we really appreciate you coming out and spending some time with us.
Yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do this again.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get into a little more habitat stuff.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Good.
So, well, hey guys, thanks for watching. This probably spurred a lot more questions. So if you have any, we're gonna have Jeff on again. If you have any questions for the next time that we have him on, shoot it our way so we can make sure to have those ready for him. And we appreciate you guys, like I said, for watching. You can find this, you'll see this on Facebook, and for those that aren't on Facebook and you want someone to see it, it'll be on YouTube at the Truman Lake Fishing Intel YouTube channel as well. So I'm Tyler Mahoney.
And I'm Jeff Faulkenberry.
And our special guest,
Jef Hodges.
Thanks.
And by the way, prescribed fire is my other passion. So if you want to talk about fire, we can have another really good
I like fire.
That's right. That's right. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.